Hi, I'm Moone from Mo Drama, and this is Moone Interviews. My guest today is Phay Wills from Ontario, Canada. She is a businesswoman and an independent film producer. Hi, Phay. How are you?
Hi, Moon. I'm great.
So you're going to tell us how we're going to understand a bit more about the independent film market and how to work with that as writer, producer, maybe director as well.
Absolutely. Well, William Goldman said nobody knows anything in this business, so I'll just give you my take on it.
So tell us your background. How did you get into film
So
production?
I did a little bit of everything in the business. My background before film was in hospitality and tourism. And I was on a marketing board, and we had this joint event with the film industry that was developing in Calgary, Alberta at the time. And I went to this networking event, and I met this guy. And it was like one of those soul connections. We were just so connected instantly. He was making his first film. We literally moved in together that night, initially as roommates, and then it developed into a little romance. But I was fascinated with the industry, absolutely fascinated with every part of the filmmaking. He had done principal photography on the film, but I did get to be involved in some of the second unit shooting, and then our apartment was turned into the Foley studio. And we did some of the, like I'd run next door and call in, and he would record me over the phone as like the operator or something that needed to be done in terms of a little voiceover in the background. So I just fell in love with the process, and it felt like home for me. I just loved every aspect of it. So in those days, it was on film, and Calgary didn't have facilities or anything like that. So when it came to doing the sound edit and the color correction, we had to drive 14 hours out to Vancouver to put it in the car. We drove out there, stayed up all night, back the next day.
Yeah.
And the companies out there, they were really good about supporting independent filmmakers because there weren't that many of us then. And I ended up taking like 3 bottles of Bailey's, one for the guy that gave us the deal, and then for the 2 editors that worked with us. And they were just blown away because no one ever said thank you. It was just kind of expected. So that little film became a cult film, which you can't plan. It just happened that way. It was a little low budget sci-fi film, and Mystery Science Theater, if I don't know if your viewers know what they are, but they like to take B sci-fi films and rip them to shreds. So it was ridicule that got us famous. We were on their top 10 list. So you find that there's a fame being not a great film as well as there is. And what the thing about it was, yes, they made fun of it, but the fans loved it. Like, they genuinely loved the film. 30 years later, I still get invited to film screenings to talk about it.
That's the appeal of B films, especially mystery.
Yeah. I mean, it had heart. It had heart. I mean, the biggest challenge was Tardis was Dutch, so English wasn't his first language, and he loved melodrama. So a lot of the stuff was over the top, and the actors were beginning actors, so they couldn't carry the roles as well as what was needed for, what he was trying to do. But he did such cool things with the special effects and the miniatures, and there was some amazing people that worked in it. So that the funniest part of that was he had set up a deal with a distributor. He was all excited. So he wanted me to take a look at the contract because I had a business background. So I'm looking at this 3-page, badly typed, like grammar and spelling errors and sentence structure was horrible on it. And the guy actually was asking for intergalactic rights in perpetuity. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get us another distributor. Don't worry, right, on that. So at that time, Telefilm Canada, which is our national funding agency, had an internship. So I applied for the internship. I managed to get us a distributor in Los Angeles. There was a Canadian that was set up down there. I did my research by looking at which Canadian companies were representing these types of films. So I ended up getting an internship with them. So I went down to Los Angeles, got to be part of the American film market with my own film. So that was so exciting. I ended up staying down there for 3 months and got to know the industry and make all kinds of contacts. And then I came back and I got onto a project called Heaven and Earth, which was a Japanese co-production with Canada. And we'll talk about the co-productions because you said that Malaysia's not involved with that. I'll tell you a little bit about how that works. So this was like a $35 million film, huge. So So I worked in the production office as a PA, loved it, learning a lot. And during that time, the production accountant took an interest in me and had a talk with me and said, it's really hard to find people with good organizational skills. And would you be interested in training in this area? And I'm like, I want to learn everything. And math was never something that appealed to me, but doing the production accounting, I learned so much about filmmaking because everything has a dollar figure on it. So you got to see how everything worked. You were interacting with every department that was in there. So I loved it. And that ended up becoming my career. I ended up in Toronto. The internship that I had, I also got to do the Toronto International Film Festival with Alliance and their marketing department. They were the largest company in Canada at the time. So that was exciting, being part of TIFF with a big company and everything. I learned a lot from that experience as well. So the production accounting became my career, but on the side, I was always, working on independent films and helping people out, whether I was production manager, kind of associate producer, like whatever capacity I could get involved with. And then I decided that I wanted to get involved with writing. At that point, I didn't want to be in the film industry if I was going to be writing, because the hours are 14-hour days, 6 days a week. You can't be doing anything else. And I also wanted some life experience. So I ended up working at a day job. It was a social club. It was tons of fun. And then I went down to the Great American Pitch Fest, which you never know where your contacts are going to end up in future. Signe Olnick that ran it, I had got her first job in the industry. Oh. So I had it in, so I went down, had a great time. So I went the first year as a writer.
2 feet in the door, yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Oh, it was great. So I got introduced to extra people and stuff, right? There was some advantages to it. So the first year I went as a writer, and what we did that I would highly recommend to anyone doing conferences or things like that, because you can't go to everything, we formed a little group and we were like, okay, so who wants to go to what? So we went to different classes, and then we met up after the classes at night and exchanged notes. It was great. So we got to take advantage of more of what was going on. So I did some pitching there. I got to meet Blake Snyder, who did Save the Cat. I did some consulting with him, and we became a little bit friends. Like he kind of stayed as a bit of a coach for me. So that was fantastic. He was such a wonderful, wonderful man. I got to take courses like Dr. Linda Sager and these, Pilla, I can't think of her last name, but just some amazing people that were there.
Alessandra.
Yes. Yeah. She was amazing.
I've met her. She's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Inspiring.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. Her energy level is just crazy. Then Signe called me and said, I want you to come down next year as a producer. And I said, well, I'm only interested in producing my own stuff. I don't really want to I'm not looking for scripts from other people. And she said, come on, it'll be really good for you. And I know how good you're going to be with the new people and their nerves and everything else. And I said, okay, what if I do this? I'll come down early. I'll go through the workshops. I'll get to meet everybody so they're really comfortable with me. And I'll be the one they can practice their pitches on. So I went down and it was a blast. And then when it came to the pitching session, I mean, studios are there and HBO and, Steven Spielberg's company and like all these amazing people were there, big time agents and all this stuff. I had the biggest lineup. So everyone's like, who's that little producer from Canada? Because everybody came and practiced their pitches and
because it's
got the nerves.
So inviting. It's exactly what somebody would need, like me, who writes but has to pitch their own work, needs that practice, needs that hard-boiled character just sitting there looking at you, like not being amused at all until you break them. And that requires a lot of practice. You have to do it over and over again, and you can't be stale with it.
Well, and the other thing too was I was able to give them, okay, that was good, but try it this. Or you're looking really nervous, don't, just to hold your hands together so you're not fidgeting or whatever, right? Like just giving them little tips like that before they go and do their pitch. So yeah, it was, I mean, I don't know if you've been to a pitch fest, but it's like speed dating. People line up 15 minutes and then the bell goes off. And if the person wants to keep you, they can keep you at the table past the 15 minutes, right? So yeah, it was an amazing, amazing program that she did. But, she's got to get on with her life at some point because that took up a lot of it. But she really did a lot of good for a lot of people when she was running that program. It was fantastic. You had asked me about failures, horror stories, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good one. I started the chapter for women in film and television in Alberta. So I started the Alberta chapter. And at that point, I had some good contacts in the industry. So I would bring in some, I knew that a producer was coming in to the Banff Festival or whatever. So I'd get them, to piggyback and come in and talk to us. We had a lot of really prominent women come in and talk for a little group, right? And one of the things I had them do was they had to tell a Tales from the Trenches story. So they had to tell, because that's encouraging for new people. Oh my God, she got through that nightmare, I can too, kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so here's mine. Okay, I created this. It started out as going to be a sketch series, and then it turned into a sitcom. Now, at that time in Canada, sitcoms were the kiss of death. We didn't even have corner gas then. Like, we didn't have sitcoms. They just too expensive to produce, all that kind of stuff. But I still wanted to learn things, and it got really strong feedback. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to put in for a pitch. I can at least get development funding and go through this process. And then maybe the next project I write will be a feture film that's going to be easier to get produced. So I did my Bible, did all my homework, did the pitch. And I always study in industry. One of my first mentors when I was a teenager was the Swedish consul out of Calgary, Rudolf Zume. He was an amazing man. And he taught me, if you want to understand anything, you go to its origins and you understand what makes it work. If you took this away, it wouldn't be there, right? So in the broadcast industry for television, it's all about advertisers. Yeah. So I thought I would be really smart and go get my own advertisers. I'm a business person that still didn't know a lot, right? I just kind of, this would be a good idea. I'll go do that. So I managed to get a regional airline. I got an international snack company and an international beer company.
Hey, that's
to
pretty
write
good.
letters. I know, to write letters saying that they would buy ads on the pilot for this project. And I took it to the broadcaster, and he's like, well, when I first pitched it, he's like, that's not going to happen. You can't say that. So then I went back and
You're the creative. You're not supposed to do business.
I know, it was hilarious. He's like, well, how do you have these contacts, right? Okay, so I'll tell you who they were. Molson's, kind of a big beer company, right? Big international beer company. Well, it just so happens that my dad's first cousin was Bill Molson's first wife. And their wedding was at my grandfather's estate out here. So we had film footage from the wedding that had been transferred. In those days, it was like VHS, right?
Yeah.
So I called up the head of marketing and said, I will give you a copy of the VHS tape of Bill and Mary's wedding, which will get you great brownie points if I can get a meeting with you. That got me into the meeting, and they loved the pitch. And he's like, yeah, I would love to see shows like this on Canadian television. And it was very supportive. And so I got him. The snack company was the funniest thing ever. It was a sitcom that had an element of animation with it. And there was this little animated stick pretzel. And again, this was like old school days, you would fax something to get something through to somebody, right? So every day I faxed over, I had an animator that I was working with. So we did a different cartoon saying something funny and personal to the guy. I looked up everything I could, found out what baseball team he liked, all this kind of stuff, right? So this little cartoon would show up in his inbox every day with a little bubble saying something to him. So I get this phone call, and the guy's like, do you realize that I get 500 pitches, a week? Do you realize how rare it is for me to actually be phoning you? And I said, yeah, the pretzel got to you, didn't he? I just love him. I said, well, that's your whole life and you've never had one to talk to, right? So, and then the airline, my friends were an ad agency, and they would call me in to do little video promo stuff or whatever that they needed for a pitch session or whatever, right? They also used me for ideas for stuff. So this was a new regional airline that was starting up. I don't know if you guys would know WestJet. I think they're doing international flights now, but I think they're more in this area. But they were known as the friendly airline. My friend had set that up as their corporate culture. He calls me up at the beginning of March and he said, we need something to get us some publicity. What can you come up with? Well, I had run a comedy club, so I knew comedians. So I said, we'll put clean, quality stand-up comedy on all their flights for April Fool's Day.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
We did that. Hit all the papers. Not only, it was such a huge success that the pilots still tell jokes. It's become the thing.
Because it's the package that you're pitching now, like not just the creative.
Yeah, well, and okay, so I was ahead of the curve, got my development funding. I had Telefilm Canada. There was some provincial funding that was available at the time. It was enough money to write a first draft and to go to Toronto for meetings and stuff. So I went to Toronto. I ended up with the top Second City writer-director who penned the draft for me. He was amazing. And I already had the Bible structured and everything else. So I took a look at Second City cast, and I basically cast it for him. I said, here's who I would put in the roles, so that he had a really close idea of what I saw. And then we worked on it. And the script that he did, I mean, he did it with my guidance, but it was so funny and so brilliant. So I sent it out. I went to the Banff Television Festival and put it in everybody's boxes and got the pitch out. And I managed to get a Second City producer that had done the Second City TV specials. He came on board attached to the project. So I had some clout, because that's one thing you don't want to do as a young producer, is go in on your own. They'll eat you alive. You need to have someone kind of protecting you, right? Yeah. So he was great, because he just gave me my head, let me run with it, do it my way. But he was always there to support me and give incredible feedback, and was just a blast to work with. Sent it out, and I get... Well, first of all, I was trying to set up a meeting with one of our big broadcasts, one of our national broadcasters. So, you know, I'm a regional producer, female, nobody knows me, not getting anywhere. Phone call after phone call after phone call. They're not returning my calls. I got to be quite friendly with this guy's secretary, because I said, I'm just going to keep calling. This is what I do. I was in sales, and I know eventually they will break down. We can talk about anything you want. You just got to know that I'm going to be calling in twice a week and just check it in, right? So she's like, okay. So I literally did that for 3 months. And then I said, okay, I don't know if this is going to hurt me or not, but I need to get this meeting. So I'm going to take it upstairs. She's like, go for it. I called the secretary of his boss, and I said, I have left what was twice a week for 3 months. I've left like 35 messages. I'm a regional producer. I have funding from, you know, the big guys from Telefilm Canada, and I need to set up a meeting with them. What do I have to do to get this? The next day I get a phone call and the meeting is set up. So at that point, that was past the funding. So I was on my own dime at this point, because the funding was limited then, right? Saved up the money, did the trip to Toronto to take the meeting with this guy. And he canceled the meeting. He was in rehearsals for something. So he canceled my meeting that had been booked like a month in advance. He knew I was flying in from Alberta, you know, all the costs involved, and wouldn't reschedule. I was in town for a week.
Oh, no.
So that's the way you were treated. If you weren't in with the right people, that's how you were treated. So even though I had the Second City producer attached, we were still ignored. Yeah, it was after that, I guess I went to the Banff Television Festival and submitted it. So the reader's report came back. It's the standard, I'm sure you appreciate, we get a lot of projects, you know, standard rejection letter, right? Not telling you anything. Attached to it was their internal reader's report. Now, I think that was a mistake. I don't think they normally did that.
I don't think they share those.
They don't usually attach the coverage. So it might have been the secretary that attached the coverage for me.
Your ally, yeah, on the inside.
My ally. The coverage said, cutting edge. This is the best script I've ever read. These people are geniuses. I want to meet this Phay Wills. And you couldn't have got better coverage.
I mean, you're rejected. You have a good script, but you're only rejected because you're not in the crowd.
It was political. It was political. They wanted their funds to go to certain things.
Right.
And I didn't fit in with the format of what they wanted. Plus I was unproven. Like, it would have been a nightmare for me to go in with. They would have totally destroyed that project. This was before Ally McBeal came out. Okay. I had fantasy sequences in it. It's a multi-dimensional script. There were 4 different realms that interacted with each other in this thing. So it was way ahead of its time. You know, like I said that when I got rejected, I didn't take it as a rejection. I'm like, I'm 10, 20 years ahead of my time in this project. So I know so much more now. My instinct said, let it go, let it go, let it go, because they will destroy it. Yeah, that part of it was really crazy. My biggest passion was writing. More than anything, it was writing. That was the project that kind of started me off, even though I didn't write the script. I created the characters in the Bible, and I was basically, like in television series, the writers rule, right? So they're the executive producers guiding where it's going. I learned a lot from that process, and then doing the pitch fest and everything else, that's when I started to develop myself further as a writer. I really loved it. And I realized that I needed to get away from the film industry, get back into the real world with real people, because how can you write for the public if you're removed from them? With what you're doing every day. And also I didn't have a life. I wasn't playing. I wasn't meeting people and talking to different people in different professions and stuff. So I took jobs that were interesting. And then when I moved back here 5 years ago, this is a much smaller town. I had moved into a small town when I was out there and got into antiques, which I've always been interested in as a sideline. So I opened a big antique market here, and we had a lot of fun, but just meeting the public and the stuff that came out of there When I finally got back to writing again, the ideas were just flowing. I wrote like 12 premises and I showed them to friends in the industry and they're like, I would watch every one of these films. And then I go into the forums and there's an agent that I knew from the Pitch Fest. She sent me a PM and because she had seen the project when I was pitching and had given me some really good feedback and stuff on it. And she said, if you're writing, I'm repping you. Yeah, your contacts never go away and you never know where people are going to end up. So you definitely want to develop that. That's right. So I got involved a lot in the independent film sector in Calgary. We had very strong film cooperatives that have been around for 30 years. So one was film and one was video. And then of course, as the markets merged, they grew into that area. But M Media is second to none. They mentor other organizations and stuff like that. So Canada is quite unique for this. And this is something I would definitely recommend for you guys to set up in Malaysia. A film cooperative, it's a nonprofit. People pay a membership fee and it's there to support people in the industry. So what you can do as a group, you can apply for funding. You can get sponsors, you can do different things, and you can start to gather gear that people can share and, you know, have workshops, bring in a guest. Somebody pays for an online workshop that people are then sitting as a group taking together. There's all kinds of things that you can do to kind of share resources. It also gives you the community sense to help each other with your projects, to do script readings, to organize whatever you want. And as people start to grow in the business, they'll have extra gear that they will donate.
So you can put like a green screen wall. You can have like all the gear. You just have like a booking.
Yeah, you have a booking stuff. So a few tips on it. If you have expensive gear, the co-op goes out and buys a decent camera and you have some decent lighting gear, only rent it to, like we had two categories. We had like general members and then we had producing members. Right. So in order to be a producing member, you had to have certain experience in the industry so that you weren't just renting the camera to anyone to, you know, that could break it or something.
Yes.
Because the co-op pays for that, right? And they could be loaned out if you had a producing member go with you that was on the set vouching what was happening and that kind of thing. I will send you a list that you can post as part of this of some of the top ones, because Canada's really known for cooperatives. It's a big thing in this country. They're fantastic. We're networked across. So when I was part of the ones in Calgary, I traveled to Toronto for a month or something and stay with friends. They would let me use their services as if I was a member in the Toronto one.
That's nice.
So it was fantastic. And when I moved to Toronto and I joined WIFT, they had a thing for people that were more experienced in the industry. So they asked each of the members, you had to put in, I don't know what it was, 20 hours of volunteer work or something like that. What they did for someone that was experienced is, will you do a workshop in your field of expertise? And that can be in lieu of your
So were members organizations or individuals?
Okay, so a cooperative is the organization.
Yeah, you have an organization.
Yeah, that's the organization, and then individuals join as a member.
Right.
I don't know, the laws are different in different countries, but in Canada, a cooperative can actually own property and it can own equipment and, you know, that kind of thing. So typically you would rent space. So we had one room that was like, you know, people used it for rehearsals. They used it there was tables that folded down. So you put up the tables to have your meetings in there. We did workshops in there. You could, book it for green screen space. We had a green screen wall that was in there that people could use. So that kind of thing was there. We had a full editing suite that members could book in and use. And then we also did courses.
With a splicer.
Well, there was a splicer in those days, but no, I mean, now it's all digital editing.
Yeah.
But no, we had a Steenbeck, the big, huge, heavy film editing systems that they had in the old days. We had one of those. I lived in a house with a bunch of filmmakers and we had one of those in our living room. It's like 4-foot piece of machinery, right? Because everybody just helped each other out. But that's what you did. And then people work on each other's projects and, you know, you do your workshops together. The idea was to raise the bar for who you had, like to develop the talents of who you had in your industry. The other thing that I would recommend to anyone in the industry, even a scriptwriter, get in and work on films in every capacity that you can. The more cross-training that you do, the better you understand the business. When I was at LIFT, I did a workshop on production management and production accounting for independent films. Incredibly boring subject, but we got really good attendance because people heard that I was funny and, was very generous with my experience and stuff, right? I had a lot of film school students from Ryerson and stuff that were in that group. This was early 2000. So we'd just gone through the big, what did everybody do for New Year's kind of thing, right? And I had been invited to this big Hollywood party. We're talking big names in Hollywood. And I said, yeah, I didn't do that. I wanted to just hang out with my friends. And everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God. I'm like, okay, well, here's your first lesson. The people that are important to you are going to be important to you your whole life. The people that you meet in the film industry, a lot of them are fair weather friends. It's based on how good you are for their career, especially in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is awful for that. The best thing to see on that story is Tom Shadyack's documentary. You have to look it up. I can't think of the name of it, but he was the producer that launched Jim Carrey's career. And he had an epiphany. And he moved into like this $7 million mansion all by himself and realized there's got to be more to life than this. So he wanted to change his lifestyle. So he got a bicycle and started bicycling around. And then he got hit by a car and almost died. And of course, everyone that had been his friend rejected him. Jim, I guess, still showed up, but because everybody thought he wasn't going to make it, wasn't going to be able to direct again. So they all dumped him. So he ended up doing this documentary about what true happiness is. I can't think of the name of it. I'll have to look it up for you, but it's excellent. Anyway, so we just talked about that. Like, it's the people that you know, and you don't know where someone in this room is going to end up.
That's right.
In years to come either, right? I mean, LIFT it still is one of the best cooperatives. So that's another one that you should look at in terms of the kind of programming that they do, their structures. And they could have, some of them probably now have, like with Zoom and everything else, you guys could probably set up something. If you see a workshop that they're doing, get your group over there and say, can we Zoom in and take part in it? That would be fantastic for you guys, because the resources that are out there now are incredible, absolutely incredible to learn. The biggest advice that I've ever given anyone learning independent film is, whether you're a writer, an independent producer, make as many shorts as you can. Everybody was talking about Juno. That was the big hit at the time, because Jason Reitman was a Canadian, born in Canada. I mean, he grew up in Los Angeles because his dad was Ivan Reitman, who did Ghostbusters and Twins and all those huge Hollywood comedies. So Jason grew up on film sets, literally. And his first film was a film called Thank You for Smoking. All-star cast, absolutely brilliant first feature. And then his second film was Juno, which just people went crazy over the film. I said, do you know how he got to be that good? He made 30 short films.
Yeah.
So every time you make a short film, because there's so many things, when it's in your head, or when you're reading a script, it's like reading a book and going to see the film. It's not the same, right?
Yeah.
So the more you go through that full creative process, each time you do it, you're learning something else. You're learning better what to give the editor to work with. You're learning how to design your sets so they're going to look richer. And each project you can give yourself, okay, I really want to study sets and color schemes and working with metaphor and color in that on this film. That's something that I really want to focus on. And then the next film, you really want to focus on something else.
And like, because you could just have like a week or 2 weeks doing the shooting and the production stage, you can actually invest more time in post-production and pre-production, just because you've got
in everything, because your film. Okay, so the other advice on short films is keep them under 10 minutes. If they're over 10 minutes, you have less of a chance of getting into the festivals, because they're trying to get as many films in as they can.
Right.
So
even though they say under 40 minutes, it's still better to keep it under 10.
It's still keep it under 10. Absolutely keep it under 10. It's also because if you're sending that as a demo reel or something, people are more likely to look at it.
True, yeah.
And the biggest mistake that people make is, there's 10 pages of dialogue that should be 2 paragraphs. Right. Like, people are always overwriting and overextending when they're new. Learning to do it succinct is a really good gift to learn how to do features properly. The other thing is especially if you're doing a feature film, really extend your development process. Rehearse your script. Go into the sets, locations if you can, and walk through it. And, if you can't get your actors, borrow some actors to help play those roles, just so you can get the set lit and look at it, or at least get your blocking done, or whatever it is that you're learning. Like, do as much prep as possible. Really extend your prep, because people are so anxious. All they want to do is shoot. First directors, that's it. Like, I just want to be there yelling action. I want that power.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about what's best for the project.
Yeah.
I've done first films with people. I couldn't even get them to do a table read. And we would have picked up problems that were obvious in the script had we done a table read, because you see stuff that comes out of that.
Well, yeah, I just spent September, October working on a short film. It's not my project, but I was working on the project. And I came in as an actor, then I became the acting coach. So it was like I went into an audition just to do a small part. And I came out being like the acting coach for the production, because, yeah, it does require so much work. You have to put so many hours into getting it right. It's not that actors are inexperienced, but the script that has to gel with the characters and the energy that has to come between them. Because when you go to short film, you've only got moments to show how the characters ignite each other and why, and the dynamics. You've got to build that. You can't do that with two perfect strangers that have just gone into auditions and don't know each other. They've got to build the dynamo of the relationship.
The chemistry is part of it, but it's also when you're actually out there blocking and you're not spending money, you're just doing like a rehearsal or whatever, then you're going to see stuff that's there. It's like, oh, I just realized something. I need to write this into the script, or need to shoot from this perspective or something like that. Yes. So this is Griffin, by the way.
Hi, Griffin. Hello.
Say hi. So she's my little sidekick. The other area that I wanted to talk about is the whole co-production thing.
I'm trying to envisage doing this here, and I'm not sure where to cap it. Like, how many members would be reasonable to work with and manage to cope with for an organization?
So with a cooperative, the main thing you want is you want to design it for the people that are serious about the industry.
Yeah.
Okay. Your workshops, the public can take, the people that are kind of interested, right?
Yeah.
What you really need is people that are going to, because everybody's being a volunteer and they're doing the work. And what happens is people all get gung-ho to start, and then they start dropping off. And if you've got a small community, you're going to burn people out. Do programs once a month. The best thing to do is get everybody together to see what the needs are in that area. Like trying to get something started here. I said, I'm not going to run it because I've done that. I've put my time in. I put in thousands of hours volunteering, but I will coach you guys. So if you can find the people to run it, I'll be there to help you get it set up and show you what to go through and stuff. But they couldn't find enough people that were interested in committing the time to get it going. So it didn't happen. But we did manage to get everybody together to discuss what was needed. Gear was one of the big things. And right away, you saw the video production companies, and there's a couple little smaller companies that are doing, fishing series and that kind of stuff that have like TV series going on. And they're all, I have old gear because we've upgraded. We would be willing to donate our gear to the co-op. And, so we thought, okay, we'll just get a storage locker that has a combination, and only senior members have to go in to get the gear or whatever. And, we were too early to set up office space. So we just checked around, and there's always places that you can meet. There's a library or there's whatever to have your meetings. You don't have to start getting into too much of an overhead or too much right away. Like when we started Women in Film and Television, the main thing was networking and understanding the realities of the industry. Anybody can take courses, but being in the business for real is a whole different story. The monthly meetings had someone who told her story of how she got into the kind of like what we're doing here, right? And then opened it up to the floor for questions. That was what was needed.
So you can leverage off everybody's experience and their experiential learning in the industry. One person's learned this area, another person's learned that area. Everyone can leverage off the experience.
Well, and that's what I was saying about the cross training. The more you can help each other out, people that are in lighting and doing, the lighting and electrical, it would be great for them to work in sets because they're going to see both sides of what they do. And it's something fun for them. Instead of doing all the heavy lifting, because all they're doing is setting up gear, they're not really getting to do anything creative. Designing the set is pretty creative. So if they've got an inkling for that, get them trying that side of things. I mean, the main thing when you're in a small community is who are the people that are going to move ahead, and what can we do to help that happen as a group? So let's say you've got a dozen people. Get them all together and say, okay, how much time can everybody put in? And again, you find out somebody might have more time on their hands, or maybe it's their responsibility to find a volunteer that will do that time. Because you can find people that'll do like admin and phoning people and sending emails and doing whatever that can help on that kind of a thing. I mean, you can get a library going, like a resource video library where the cooperative buys the courses that are then kept on a hard drive that your members have access to. That kind of stuff. I don't know about copyright on that. That was an area I wasn't involved in, so I don't know whether that's allowable, but I'm assuming it is. especially if it's a small membership. Yeah, just find out what your people need and you go from there. You're not expecting the cooperative to make a lot of money. You're expecting it to provide the needs and resources and just the community. What it's like when you're writing a script, even if a bunch of people that aren't professional actors are reading it, it helps.
That's right, yeah.
You're hearing the pacing, you're hearing the dialogue spoken out loud, you know, you're getting a feel for the pacing on it. So anything like that is helping. The other thing that Malaysia should look into as on the bigger scale, on the government side of things, is the co-production treaties. Because we're next door to the big monster, Hollywood and the US industry, Canada gets swallowed up. All of our best people go there. That's what happens. So how do we create our culture here? How do we create our voice here and our culture here? We've come up with funding programs, and a lot of countries all over the world have their funding programs. So right now, if you're dealing in international law, and if I'm trying to make a film with someone in England, what you would have to go through would be 100 pages of legal documents, incredible expenses, all this kind of stuff. So Canada created treaties with, I don't know, probably 30 countries now. So the treaty is designed to reduce the paperwork. So it's literally an agreement between countries that sign on to it. It's like a 10-page document. The formula is very simple. There's key people. So the writers are 2 points, directors 2 points, producers are 2 points. And then there's cinematographer, composer, editor. Anyways, it makes up 10 points that are in there. If I'm making a film with England, the two companies talk between it. It's like, okay, I think I can raise 60% of the funding here. Can you guys cover 40%? They're like, yeah, we can do that. So then 60% of the key creatives have to be Canadian. 60% of the funding comes from Canada. 60% of the budget needs to be spent in Canada. So that can be in post-production, that can be filming here. So it's not usually 60-40, it's usually kind of 80-20 or 70-30 because it's too expensive to jump across oceans and film in 2 different countries. Sometimes there's smaller scenes or second unit scenes that are done in whatever country is doing the smaller filming, or it could be the composers from there. Like these days, it's fantastic. There's so much more.
Is it usually Commonwealth countries?
Yeah, especially the Commonwealth, but it doesn't matter. I think it's about 30 countries around the world. So all you do is fill in the blanks. And it's considered a local production, which you're like in Canada, I don't know how it works in every country, but in Canada, our broadcasters are required to spend a certain amount of their budget on Canadian content. Most treaty productions, I would think, are probably in the $3 million and up. Like they're probably slightly larger budgets. If it's really small scale and independent, the world is open now. There's filmmaker forums all over the web. See what they have for resources and the rest of it.
Shooting in Malaysia is not that expensive. Like you can make a blockbuster feature film for very, very low compared to overseas. But
how experienced are your crews?
That's it. They're very experienced. But the problem is if you're doing something with 2 locations and you're only using 5% of another country's, it's actually going to be half the cost.
Yeah, I know.
Of the whole film. It's a bit difficult to work in tandem in that way because they have union industry standards and here they don't.
Yeah, we had a very low budget film. The film was like, $500,000. We needed New York footage. So we used, you can buy stock footage.
That's right, yeah.
And then you go through the stock footage and it's like, oh, we could do that brick wall. So we could have that and then do the close-ups for our actors and get that to match, right? Yeah. And green screen. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that you can experiment with.
Okay, so Phay, what I'd like to ask you is about, for independent filmmakers, how is the best approach to go production management and budgeting?
If you're doing a short or a very low-scale film, with short films, it's easy. Find your locations, find your actors, work with what you've got, because that will give you more value on film. So let's say you're a screenwriter or an independent filmmaker, you want to make a name for yourself as a director. So you want to put something on your demo reel, you want to get a short that's going to get out to festivals. So work with the strengths that you have in the area. You said you have fantastic crews. Crews are always happy to help out on independent films. The biggest thing is there are certain positions that you want to pay, which I will go over. The professionals love to be able to work in another area. A pro and has worked on sets before would be willing to come on. They'll mentor your junior person in this position if they get a chance to do the sets. There's lots of ways of doing that where you can work with bringing the strength in but not having a bigger budget. That was another thing that we had in some of our funding programs. In the weaker areas, we had mentorships. So you could get extra funding, and if your director mentored someone local, if you're, you know, any of the department heads would mentor somebody, you got extra funding for it. So yeah, work with your strengths. So let's say there's a location that's fantastic, right? That's going to look so good on film. We can create something that's there. I've done open call auditions before I do shorts in an area where I don't know the talent. I did that when I first went to Toronto. So I just had samples of some scripts that I had written, and you can also take scenes from the types of projects that you'd like to do. So we got to know the talent that was there. We saw that this person can sing. This person has this weird talent that we could write into a short script, like whatever it is, right? And again, the cooperative is perfect for that. That could be something that the co-op does, so that everybody has those resources. Here's the demo reels of the actors that are doing shorts. So then you build your project around them. You pick some people, you create it. Then you're saving money, and B, you're increasing your success factor in what you're doing on the project, because you already know, I've got this actress that's going to be gold on this, and we're writing a part that's exactly what she's wanted to do, so she's going to be passionate about it. So you work with that. In the workshop, I would take the same budget, and we would take 3 different short films and show you how to spend it. And you talk to your crew, and you talk to the people that are in there. Oh, my dad's got a farm we can shoot on. Okay, so you don't have any location costs. Someone else has gear that they can loan you. That's going to save you some money there. It's a matter of being realistic and finding out what you've got. And especially if you're doing low budget films, it's the same kind of thing. The biggest problem with a bigger project is you're dealing with time restraints. You can't necessarily write for that actor or that crew person because they may be pulled off onto a big budget film. But we had to rush this little independent feature that we're doing because all of our crew was going on to Unforgiven, which won the Academy Award for Clint Eastwood. So we had to be done by a certain date because they were all going on to that film. So that's why typically in Canada, we would shoot off season. And then you're writing for indoors. Always work from your strengths and what you're dealing with. Again, I can't emphasize enough, prep, know what you're working with. Okay, contingency comes in 2 locations. A, it's a line item in your budget, and B, it's your backup. If a film comes in and you could lose your crew, do you have backup crew? Do you have a second location? Always be prepared. Everything that can go wrong will on a short, low budget film. It's just, it's the nature. So the more prepared you are, the better. You absolutely want to pay for someone that knows what they're doing as an editor. I have used a Key Grip as a cinematographer and been extremely happy with the work because they understand lighting. And they had studied enough under the, you know, they'd worked as the right arm for some of the top cinematographers, so they knew their stuff and they wanted to try it. Cinematography, the look is critical. The other thing you absolutely have to pay for is your sound recordist. Absolutely, that has to be good. And learn sound recording. Like when I did my first little film, the big sound house in Toronto gifted me to do my sound cut there. And I said, I'd like to sit in on the sound editing process. Your post and production sound, your editing, and those are key areas. If you've got something with multiple locations and a bigger crew and a bigger budget, you need an experienced production manager. Sometimes your producer can fill that role, but what happens if you've got to go and be elsewhere? Right. If you're doing a feature film, you absolutely have to have a production manager, and you want someone that's got some experience because they're going to be able to take a look at your budget and go, okay, this is not going to work. He or she will know from their experience. They'll read the script, look at the budget and go, this isn't realistic. You can go on to Telefilm Canada's webpage to get a detailed production budget template. So it has all the categories and everything like that. That tends to be a standard that's used around the world in terms of the categories, but people kind of make them up. It's also overkill. That's designed for like a $35 million co-production with huge budgets and stuff. But get your base categories down so that you understand the difference between your detailed budget and your cost reporting and your top sheet. So your top sheet is a summary. So they're just taking a look to see that some funding requirements had certain things. Your above the line costs had to be a certain percentage of your total budget. Your Canadian spend had to be a certain percentage of your total budget. Like there was a lot of finessing that's done in the budgeting process depending on how your funding works and whatever else is involved in there. So people don't think about the props that they're going to need. They don't give props and sets enough to work with. And what you have to understand with those departments, if you're new at this, is they're out buying all this stuff and bringing it back and the director's rejecting 80% of it. No, get me something else instead. No, I want a red 1967 Volkswagen, not a yellow one. You know, like, so a lot of times they would actually have to go out and just buy this stuff. They're scrounging in thrift stores, all these places to try and get it, bring it back, and then it gets all rejected. Well, then how are you going to make money off that stuff? I mean, you can make a little bit off your set sale, but but you can't. So the lower the budget, the higher the contingency. It's
That's
a given.
Exactly what I was going to suggest. 12% for the contingency, because there's
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
many things that could go wrong.
Absolutely.
But the higher the budget,
Yeah.
it could go down to about 6 or 5%.
Post-production is rarely budgeted properly,
Mm-hmm.
because most people don't understand. It gets a post to really understand what you're dealing with. And again, have your editor and your composer involved ahead of time. Have them look at the script. They'll tell you, they'll give you feedback on things. There's a lot of Hollywood directors out there that know the music that they want to use, and they're playing that music during the rehearsal, so people have a feel for the mood being created. Mike Lee was an independent filmmaker from England. I don't know if you knew him.
Yeah.
Loved his work. I met one of his producers when I was at the film market. Mike Lee would take one song for an entire feature film. He sped up and slowed down. He used different instrumentation. He did different parts of it. Like, watch his films again and look at what he does. That is such a good tool for a short film. It is such a good tool for one piece of music, because you've only got 5 or 10 minutes to work with. So the more the composer, because they're creative, they see the characters, they see the rest of it, they're going to connect with the whole process creatively and be able to give you much better product that way. Directors that are new don't know how to make their day. A production manager will kick their ass and get them on schedule. Right. They'll have the contacts. They'll already have their backup plans, rain cover, whatever. Today, we're not going to shoot that because rain's in the forecast. We're going to shoot the interior, the exteriors and stuff. We're going to shoot tomorrow. There's a ton of logistics. A production manager, they're going to need at least one person in the AD department, probably 2, because typically your first AD is doing the logistics and working with sets and camera, electrical, all that kind of stuff for the setup. Your other assistant director is working with your cast to deal with the scheduling and everything that's there. When you're doing short films, get used to some protocols. Do production reporting, do your budget, and do a cost reporting on your budget. Do script breakdowns, like go through the formalities of a bigger project so that when you get to that bigger project, it's a comfortable thing for you. Because your first feature film is so overwhelming for so many other reasons. You want to be as prepped as possible going in. And getting organized, it's fantastic. All of a sudden, like production reports, it's telling you who's on set that day. It's got your phone numbers. It's got your contact information. You know what scenes are being shot. So it just keeps everybody organized, prepared. We know what's happening. The pros do that stuff for a reason. Learn from them. You come up with simpler formats. So you don't do the detail of a big feature film production report. You just do a smaller version of it. Take the critical areas that are important and put that into your template. You need someone that's a coordinator. Again, this is someone that needs to be paid because they're going to be kind of producer's assistant, production coordinator, post coordinator. They're going to go through the whole show on stuff. You need someone that understands check everything 3 times and getting you multiple quotes. So it needs to be someone that's really detail oriented and loves that. Breaking into the industry, one of the best positions to get is a production assistant. There's 2 typically in a production office. So you're a production assistant in the office itself, and then you get to see all the departments. There's very rarely closed door meetings. You're overhearing discussions between the director and the producer, or different department heads when they're coming in. You're seeing how different things are working and getting a feel for the whole process. The other really cool position is the runner. And that's the person that's between the production office and the set, taking stuff back and forth, or going to get supplies, or doing whatever. So that's another really good position because you get to see how everything is working.
Wow, Phay, this has just been the most amazing, informative interview. I hardly had to ask a question. I'm blown away. Thank you so much. It's really good.
I spent so much time helping people get their start. One of the things we're going to be doing now, I don't know what shape it's going to take. I'm in an area with a lot of tourism in the summer. So I want to set up something of a kind of writers retreat and conference. We'll screen films by writers that can be discussed. We will, have some panels, and then have the writers at the retreat working with story editors and stuff. Because one of the things that's lacking right now, the biggest hole in the market, in the industry right now, is that writers are not getting support. There used to be a lot more development funding. There used to be more workshops and programs and things like the Great American Pitch Fest. It's just not happening now, and nothing moves ahead without the writer. As the industry is changing, which I think coming into this next decade,
that's why a lot of writers are moving to the video on demand platforms, because the writers get so much more say and more control over their work.
Web series too. too. I mean, you can have so much more creative freedom on that. And a lot of writers are not doing union. They're working non-union so that they've got their independence and their ability to do it. I'm getting feedback from the pros that I know. So we will find out if we're better to niche it, or we might, it depends on the story editors that we get. If they have a particular strength, then we may make it drama and comedy or something.
Ontario, here we come. Thank
All right, take care.
so much. Thank you. Bye. What?
So this was in
oh my God, hang on, sorry, pause. There's a hornet.
Okay.
It's a big hornet.
Okay, I'll take some water. You go deal with it.
Crawling on the window. It was making noise.
Turn the fan right up to agitate it. Oh my God, it was huge. It was the same one that you described.
Murder hornets.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Whoa! Wow! Okay, thanks.
Huge, right?
Huge. Okay. Whew.
Griffin wants to be in the shot now, so she's such a camera hog.
Ooh, shaking.
Okay,
There was, wait. One flew in my son's bedroom a couple of days ago. It's those Asian murder hornets.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this one just wafted in, came and was like, I thought it would go back out the window, but it actually started coming in front of me. And it's a small room and there's nowhere to run. So I had to run out of the room. Because yeah, those things can give you cardiac arrest.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let me have a drink.
Okay, so take a drink and breathe. And then I'll just start at the beginning of what I was talking about. So
yeah, do you remember? I got a bit distracted.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, no, it's all good.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to Moone Drama for the choicest, tastiest, most wholesome drama around.